Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views and News, and I'm Faisal Rehman live from our PTV Islamabad Center. Now we'll be talking about a very important topic, and that is the rising terrorism in Pakistan. And as we all know, it's a major threat to the regional peace also. The rise as far as ISIS is concerned is pretty worrisome, not only for Pakistan, but I would say for the entire region. As far as the Taliban are concerned, obviously we did expect initially that they'll be looking after major issues such as, which they in fact initially also mentioned, that they will not let anybody use the Afghan soil against its neighbors, and in particular it is also for Pakistan. But what we have seen over a period of time, that is something of prime concern. That is in fact related to two major areas. One, are the Afghan Taliban ready to fight against all the adversaries of Pakistan inside Afghanistan, whether it's ISIS or it's Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, it's Al-Qaeda or it's Daesh or any other splinter group, whether it's related to the BLA or other such, I would say, notorious groups which are involved in such activities. So, as far as the willingness is concerned, now that is also questionable. Number two, what about the capacity? We all thought that after getting that kind of an equipment from the Americans, the Afghan forces now, which hardly exist, but talking about the Afghan Taliban who are currently in the government, they'll be able to perhaps control much more of Afghanistan, and they'll be able to eliminate all the adversaries, including the ISIS factor and the Daesh. Perhaps as far as TTP is concerned, since they've been a part and parcel of the whole deal during this war against terror, and they were fighting against the Americans, and since Pakistan became a non-NATO ally, so we also suffered. I think Pakistan suffered the most, to be honest. Now, what exactly is happening and the kind of feel which we are getting, despite the fact that Pakistan has done so much for Afghanistan. You talk about any era, and Pakistan has stood right next to the Afghan brothers so that they can be taken care of, they should be helped. Even now, Pakistan hosted this OIC conference in which the major agenda was about the Afghan issue, Afghan help, and how to make sure that the frozen funds should be released, and at least some sort of pressure on the government of Afghanistan, the government or the regime of the Taliban should in fact be slightly relaxed. But having said that, things are not happening the way Pakistan wanted. Last thing before I introduce you to our panelists is that if you remember, right after the fall of Kabul, 15th August was the date last year, the day the Taliban took over, and the government individuals, whosoever was in power, including the president, the vice president, the chiefs, their other ministers, they ran away. And we all thought that now is the time that the relationship between these two countries will improve. And now, since we have a government, I won't say of our own choice, but a friendly government. And the very next day, or perhaps within the next 48 hours, let me put it this way, our DGISI at that time, who is currently the commander of the 11 Corps Peshawar, General Hamid, visited Kabul, and he in fact ensured that things will be better. But things are not better for Pakistan. In fact, this cross-border terrorism increased after that. Even yesterday, during a bomb blast, 3 of the young Jawans were martyred along with 3 children. Just imagine, 3 children, the maximum. One was, I think, 8 years old, one was 12, one was 13 or something. So this is something which is ongoing. Forget about what is happening in Balochistan or in other areas of KP, even what happened in the Karachi University or in Lahore for that matter. There is a lot to talk about. Now, let me quickly introduce you to our panelists. On my right is Air Commodore Basit Raza Abbasi Saab, who's a senior analyst. Sir, pleasure to have you on the show. And we have with us Asif Durrani Saab, former ambassador, senior diplomat. He's joining us on Skype, sir. Ambassador, pleasure to have you on the show, sir. Thank you very much for your time. And we'll also be talking to Dr. Hamid Khan Saab. He's an expert on foreign affairs, and Dr. Saab is going to join us on the telephone line from UK. Well, let me put the first question to you, sir. Now, despite several assurances by the Taliban government, so that these terrorist groups still are operating from the Afghan soil very openly, very conveniently, I would say, sir. And interestingly, all along the Pakistan border, sir. This was the area perhaps we all thought was a stronghold of the Taliban. Now it seems that the Taliban, either they do not have their writ there, or perhaps they do not have the willingness to fight the TTP, or perhaps they do not have the capacity to do so. Your take, sir.
I personally feel, Faisal, that Taliban have not shown that kind of sort of resolve in making their words good. When they came in power, they assured many things to the world. But it's August, and it's about 9 months, 8-9 months that they have been in power, and they have not moved forward. I mean, whatever they assured, they have not been able to achieve. So it comes to the same point that they are a very good fighting machine, and they won the war after a valiant struggle of 20 years. But perhaps they were not prepared that well for the peace. And now is the time.
But sir, there was this so much going on. There was so much going on, I remember, sir, whether you talk about Doha, Turkey, Murray, China, Afghanistan, Moscow, these negotiations, they were all for the peace deal, sir.
That's right. And they performed very well in those, because that showed their diplomatic skills. It was hoped and expected that once they come into the power, they will be able to better manage their government. But unfortunately, it hasn't happened that way. They are into a serious financial crisis. Their population is, a major portion is beyond poverty line, and hunger and disease are their endemic problems. And the world, I mean, it's very unfortunate that not a single country of the world, even there's many sympathizers, we were one of them, China is there and other countries.
Absolutely.
No country has yet recognized them. This is because since taking their power, they have not taken any steps which should show that they are in firm hold and they mean to move forward. They seem to be still going in circle, either because of their inability to negotiate those issues, or due to an ambivalence attitude, like we have seen for TTP. I mean, if they wanted, they could have really taken care of TTP, because it's a known entity. They were all, many of them were freed from their prisons, and many of them fought side by side with them. So they could have either controlled them or eliminated them. None of it has happened, and the result is that you see what's happening in Pakistan.
But
every day,
if you ask them, the point was that perhaps they had so many adversaries, as I earlier mentioned. It was IS, Al Qaeda, plus the intelligence agencies operating inside Afghanistan. So they couldn't open so many fronts, because at least TTP was a very close ally with the Tehrik-e-Taliban Afghanistan. Is that the reason, sir?
This is what I'm saying, that either if they are your partner, they had fought by your side, then at least you should be able to prevail upon them and convince them that Pakistan is a very important country for us. They are sacrificed as much as TTP has contributed to the Afghan struggle, perhaps, let me put it that way. And so why should they shortchange Pakistan for TTP? Pakistan has actually done much more than what TTP did. Of course, they fought with them, that's okay, that's part of history now. But now if Afghanistan has to move forward, it needs the backing and firm support and a willing support of countries like Pakistan, China, Iran, and all these countries which have a stake in this Afghan affairs. So I must say, as we see that the relationship between Pakistan and Afghan government has also soured because of whatever is happening in Pakistan.
All right, so let me engage Ambassador Saab now. Ambassador Saab, a couple of points here. A, that the Afghan Taliban, they pledged in Doha Accords not to allow Afghan soil to be used against any neighboring country, and in particular Pakistan. And secondly, sir, these terror groups have always used Afghan soil for terrorism in Pakistan, and this has perhaps created a lot of tension between the two countries. Now, we do not know whether the current regime in Afghanistan is pro-Pakistan, anti-Pakistan, or neutral. Your take, sir.
I think the current regime in Kabul is perhaps not that capable, which perhaps we thought. My second point would be that Taliban, as an opposition, when you are fighting as a militancy or a war, then you are not responsible. So they had no responsibility when they were fighting against the US troops or Afghan troops. Now, those are gone, and now they are enjoying the power. So once you are in power, then you are responsible for everything. And then not only the law and order, but also giving bread and butter to your people. There, I think, for obvious reasons, that since no country has recognized Taliban regime, so the relationship, diplomatic relationship, are missing. Secondly, Afghanistan is under sanctions. Taliban are under sanctions. Only humanitarian assistance has been given, and I think the Taliban should be thankful that the world still they can give them assistance, and UN has asked for 4.5 billion, of which I think 1.3 billion has been dispersed so far, or the food has been dispersed. So coming back to whether we expected a Taliban a friendly government, neutral government, or opposed, I think it is just a mixture of all the three. Taliban, in fact, when it comes to TTP, since TTP owes allegiance to Mullah Habibullah Khan, so certainly they will not take action against them. And when it comes to other groups, say Baloch dissidents, they did take some action, but not fully. And when it comes to ISIS, then I think Taliban's capabilities are not up to the par. And in fact, and ISIS is a hydra. It takes the shape wherever it is poured, and so you should expect that ISIS would be a headache, not only for the Taliban government, but also for Pakistan and other neighboring countries. Yes.
Basit, you just said that the regime of the Taliban in Afghanistan that is not capable of looking after those affairs. So if you remember, the international legitimacy, I mean, as far as the Taliban are concerned, their international legitimacy was totally dependent primarily on fulfilling their anti-terrorism commitments, and there were other issues about girls' education, women's rights, women working, the kind of dress code, and so much more. So they have failed on all the accounts, perhaps. So if we say that they are not looking after their commitments, they're not fulfilling them, and when you talk about this, the use of Afghan soil against Pakistan, this is something which is happening on almost daily basis. I asked this question to Brigadier Mahmood Shah the other day, and he said that the terms between the negotiators from Pakistan and those who were in fact involved in those talks from the Afghan side, they never reached a final conclusion. Perhaps it was a commitment which was verbal. Some of the commitments which were in written form, they even haven't fulfilled those. So is it the lack of capacity or the lack of willingness? Because we heard that $83 billion worth of equipment the Americans have fled. So 83 billion, I think Pakistan doesn't even have that kind of an equipment, I mean, worth 83 billion. But what I'm saying is that something could have been done from their side, at least something which was seen and taken as a very positive act by the Pakistani authorities. They haven't done anything so far.
I think you have a point. But at the same time, I think don't expect too much from the Taliban. And we are discussing Afghanistan. where till the time Americans they paratrooped Karzai and then Ashraf Ghani, and they in fact were supplying dollars. It worked. Uh, but once they started withdrawing, you see everything collapsed like a pack of cards. Taliban, in fact, they are the indigenous movement. They are the son of the soil, but they lack the experience of governance. And this is problematic. When you talk about Taliban's assurances not to allow to use Afghanistan's soil against any other country, to a greater extent, I think they have fulfilled that promise. The violence level has come down, I think, substantially in Afghanistan. But at the same time, there are certain incidents taking place here and there. But it is the other aspect from Pakistan's point of view, that is TTP. And the TTP are the ideological cousins of the Afghan Taliban. So as I said, that they owe their allegiance or their bath on Mullah Heptullah Khan's hands. So Mullah Heptullah Khan is duty bound to give them protection, to protect their interests, and which is what I think Afghan Taliban are doing. So they are not taking action against the TTP, but they are also not satisfying Pakistan because Pakistan was actually played a very substantive role in bringing Americans and Taliban on the negotiating table, and finally, what you saw at the Doha. And Americans also left not as bitter people, but I think they shook hands at Doha and they signed and they agreed to the conditions which had taken place. And then they are still in touch with the Taliban at Doha. In fact, the whole world is in touch with the Taliban at Doha. So Doha, in fact, has become, you can say, a quasi Taliban embassy where the business is being conducted. The formal business has not been conducted in Kabul, which is, I think, with time passing, it will, because Taliban won't have any other option but to be part of the world norms, and they are not an island, and they have to, in fact, comply with those international covenants which concern the human rights and also the women's rights. They'll have to, because, and it is also within the Islamic world, is resentment against the Taliban behavior because the kind of role model they are producing about Taliban, in fact, is not a service to Islam. They are portraying a very horrible picture of Islam in the world. So, in that respect, I think the Taliban will have to be counseled, and I think the ulamas from the world, they should, in fact, make an appeal or make efforts to convince the Taliban that their way is not an Islamic way. Their way perhaps may have the cultural characteristics, but
it is indeed the cultural point,
not
yes.
conform to the Islamic education or Islamic teachings. Yes.
Now, Bassa, before I put this question, sir, we have also been joined in by Dr. Hamid Khan Sahab, expert on international relations and foreign affairs. Assalamu alaikum ji, Dr. Sahab.
Ji, walaikum salam.
Good to have you on the show, Dr. Sahab. We were talking about the ongoing issues and the mistrust between Pakistan and Afghanistan. Lately, sir, there was this story that Pakistan has struck inside Afghanistan. There was a target where the TTP members were supposedly present, and it also resulted, this is what we have heard from the Afghan authorities, that it resulted in the civilian casualties. The total number was around 4 dozen or something like that. But what I want to know, sir, is that after that there was again some sort of a complaint registered by the Afghan authorities, and people were out on the roads protesting against Pakistan, burning the flags. We were not expecting this to happen, sir, after the Taliban takeover. But it is just like, I would say, jumping out of the fire into the frying pan, or the other way around, jumping out of the frying pan into the fire. How would you comment on that, sir?
Thank you very much, Faisal. Exactly. I mean, you rightly said that the situation is not what we were expecting since Taliban took over on 15th of August. But unfortunately, the matters could not be, developed the way we were expecting. Rather, I mean, the incidents what you are talking about, that they are claiming that Pakistani forces crossed Afghan border to target some of our, wanted terrorists. So Pakistan is been suffering from cross-border terror for the last 20 years. Then we were suffering due to the Indian proxies in Afghanistan, and Pakistan is keep saying and keep repeating many times that if the Taliban current regime is not able to control them and to bring them to the justice, then Pakistan will not allow, them to keep attacking on Pakistani forces crossing our borders. So, I mean, it is all blame, or I should say the all responsibility is towards the Taliban, who have failed, honestly speaking, in many aspects, like Brigadier Sir was saying as well. I think that, I mean, they have failed internally to do the governance of Afghanistan. They have failed to convince the international community or international world that they know the international norms of running a country, whether it was the matter of human rights, whether it was the matter of women's rights, whether it was the matter of others. So it is actually Pakistan is forced to take some actions if Pakistan will carry on feeling and carry on realizing that their terrorism in Pakistan is because of Afghanistan's proxies, Indian proxies in Afghanistan, which we have seen. One main thing I would say, Faisal, that I mean, whether it is attacks from the Balochistan side, whether it is the attacks from the KPK sides, everywhere there are very clear evidences that the perpetrator or the attackers were trained by either Indian proxies, or they were handled by the Indian element, and they are supported somewhere in Afghanistan, which Pakistan is keep pointing out. So Pakistan it looks like Pakistan has to reorganize its war against terror due to this recent terror wave in Pakistan, whether it is in Karachi, whether it is in Miran Shah or anywhere, because Pakistan has already given over 80,000 lives fighting this terrorism and achieving the peace. We cannot allow anybody to sabotage our peace, which we have maintained and achieved after giving over 80,000 lives, including 10,000 plus security personnel's lives.
And that is a huge number, sir. Unfortunately, that is something of prime concern. Now, sir, coming to you, again, whether you talk about the role of RAW in Afghanistan or CIA. Now, sir, after this strategic alliance, I would say, and the strategic partnership between India and United States of America on so many fronts, sir, you start off regarding the support to Kashmir, to the giving of drones. Now Chinooks are being used, offer as far as the jets are concerned, military intelligence sharing, sharing of the bases, of the ground, common exercises. What else? And then obviously, how can you rule out the fact that these two intelligence agencies won't be working together? Perhaps the role of RAW is less and the role of CIA is more in Afghanistan to keep Afghanistan destabilized and put a check on Pakistan, and then they have got their own agenda. Is that the case, sir? Because initially I interviewed, plus I was also interviewed by the Indian anchors, and I got to know that they were very worried once the Afghan Taliban took over. And they said, well, one of the major, I think, disappointment was that the Indian authorities never, in fact, had a contact with the Afghan Taliban because they were supporting the previous governments, whether it was Karzai or Mr. the other one who also ran away. But what I'm saying is that if that is the problem, or if that is the case perhaps, then I mean we should sit quiet and see what's going on. The other option is that either you go for the preemptive strikes, or use the drones, or follow the hot pursuit. If you do that, then there is hue and cry, sir. Americans can invade the entire Afghanistan because they thought that some threat is emanating from that side post 9/11, which wasn't true, by the way. Who the hell is planning a nuclear attack on America sitting in those caves? But what I'm saying is that our sovereignty is as important as the sovereignty of any other country. So if somebody is trying to make a plan to destabilize us or kill our soldiers or civilians for that matter, we have got all the legitimate rights to go and hunt them out, flush them out and kill them, and let the world know that, see, don't even dare to look at Pakistan that way.
Faisal, my point of view is that perhaps when Taliban captured power in Afghanistan, we became too euphoric. In fact, we let down our guards. We actually sort of gained the enmity of USA. You talk of strategic alliance of America with India.
Talking about
BICA, there is a very significant development. This intelligence sharing and that critical sharing, which is so sensitive and accurate information.
And transfer of technology and God knows what and what not.
Exactly. So this is because that they already had that alliance and they were moving forward every day. And to back it up, we started rebuking if you say that the Taliban Afghans have the shackles of slavery have been broken and all that, that kind of statement actually gains the enmity. Diplomacy is an art of sort of keeping your cards to your chest. You plan your moves.
Even the choice of words.
It is so significant.
Exactly.
So that is where we faltered. We started talking too much, and with the result that neither we got the friendship of that intimate friendship of Taliban which we were expecting, nor we had that sort of workable relationship that we are following with USA. We supported them and sort of brought them out of this quagmire which was Afghanistan for the Americans. We helped them out of it.
And you are blamed for all the failures of the Americans.
Exactly, because we actually sort of too vehemently started siding with the Taliban. We thought that the Taliban victory is our victory, and there were two sides.
The general
one was
impression
Taliban and
gave.
the other side were the American. So when you chose sides, then you cannot blame Americans to be becoming more intimate with India. Their long-term interests lie with it because they see their only threat on the world stage is China, and they somehow or the other, in my opinion wrongly, feel that one day India would stand with them against China, which India will never do. They just saw it a year back when they had that sort of mini skirmish in the northern fronts. So despite
Ladakh.
that, Ladakh and other. So this is what, so the lesson that we have to learn is that we have to control our words. We have to formulate our foreign policy, and it should be in the best of our national interest. But its enunciation and its declaration and its vocalization should be more nuanced. I mean, we should be very discreet in expressing what we are actually planning to do. So this is the lesson learned, that we should take our actions silently, quietly, and forcefully, of course, but we should talk less. And under the present circumstances, I think there is a change. There is a visit of foreign minister to USA
on 18th.
Yes, of course, it is for the food security, which is again a major issue of the world these days. Ever since the Ukraine war, the food security, especially for the poor nations, is a cause of concern, because we have this double whammy because of the climate situation. The crops have suffered, and then because of the logistic chain disruption, the food is lying at a place, but it's not reaching where it is required. So all these issues, he's going there, and in the backdrop of it, he'll be talking to his counterpart, the American Foreign Secretary. So I think Pakistan has to sort of reset its foreign policy, uh, if not direction, at least its enunciation and declaration has to change. It has to be more sort of diplomatic. And I would also like one more thing, that Pakistan should rethink where we have gone wrong, and now come out with something more solid, and that should be actually followed closely, rather than haphazard
And all the
knee-jerk
stakeholders should sit down
Exactly.
and look into the matter. I think that is something very important. Now, Ambassador Saab, obviously we have a very young foreign minister, obviously aided by a lady who has already served as a foreign minister. Both are from Pakistan People's Party. Pakistan People's Party has always had a very clear stance regarding the Taliban. Their statements, because they have suffered from the hands of the Taliban, whether you talk about the death of Mohtarama Benazir Bhutto or otherwise, plus so many other, I would say, senior leaders, those parties which were slightly, I would say, left of the center, whether it was MQM or it was People's Party or it was ANP. You all know what happened to Bashir Bilor Saab also. My quick comment from you that I expect is that it's high time to revisit our foreign policy, sir. That is for sure. Ambassador Saab, do tell
I
us
think,
about the areas. The foreign
Yeah.
minister is going to be in United States of America. It's going to be a 2-day official visit, very short one, but still, obviously, meetings are meetings. They're important. What do we need to keep in mind before re-engaging with the United States of America?
Well, these are many questions. It's just not a one question. But my advice is that we should stick to the brief. Let the institutions do their job. Rather than stepping to others' toes, it is better that we should leave the job of foreign policy to the Foreign Office. And secondly, well, Bilawal is very young, but yes, Madam Hina Rabbani Kar is experienced. But at the same time, behind them is a whole institution. And if you stick to the Foreign Office's advice, then you will never repent or you will not commit mistakes. But if they want to, promote their own agendas or perhaps go for the sixers, then yes, then the country faces embarrassments which we had in the past. And regarding food's security meeting, I don't know. It is the foreign ministers who would be attending that from elsewhere in the world. But it is something unusual. I'm slightly uncomfortable about our foreign ministers attending that meeting. Unless our foreign minister is invited, yes, he was invited, but for this food meeting. But I don't know whether he is the right person for that. Our food minister should have attended that. And what else was your question?
So, obviously, the basic ingredient that needs to be, shared. Our concerns should be shared. Yes, we have given them a lot of dossiers and everything, sir, but the prime concern of Pakistan should openly be addressed, should openly be shared with the Americans. At least we need to know where do we stand.
Well, our concerns are known. Americans' concerns were known. And Americans knew that India is, doing the mischief in Afghanistan. They looked the other way. And now that Americans are out, Indians are out of Afghanistan, although now they are doing their mischief through the proxies. They are doing not much, but giving money to TTP or the Baloch dissidents. But it was, in fact, Pakistan, India fighting on the Afghan soil. And Americans were least interested to counsel the Indians to stay away. So, in my view, it was not just with the other Afghans, because with the other Afghans, Pakistan was already in touch with all the groups. There's not a single group with which Pakistan was not in touch. And Pakistan had not put all its eggs in the Taliban's basket. This is a changed, policy you can very well see after the 9/11. And before that, yes, with the Taliban, we were fully supporting. But afterwards, onwards, with the Raza and other groups, we were in touch with them, and they in fact visited. In fact, the day Kabul fell, most of the major groups they were in Pakistan, holding consultations. So there's a shift, but another major shift which is now in the offing, and hopefully it would be, in fact, it would come to fruition, is our regional policy, whereby our endeavor is to create an environment, to have peaceful environment, and if you are in peace in your neighborhood, then I don't think that you need allies far afield. I would say so. Yes.
Quick comments, sir, before I go back to our friend Dr. Hamid Khan Sahab, sir. We have always looked after the Haqqani network, never went against them, despite a lot of pressure of do more from the Americans. What exactly is their role? Do you think they can play a positive role in bringing in these different factions of the Tehrik-e-Taliban Afghanistan and the Pakistani authorities closer for something concrete to happen, some meaningful dialogue maybe to take place, or perhaps something which suits both the countries?
I think short answer is there are already parleys going on. So it's an ongoing process. It takes a while, but I think we should not lose hope. Yes.
All right. Hamid Khan Sahab, a question for you, sir. When you talk about the Indian proxies in Afghanistan, if we admit that, well, the Indian influence has decreased, I will not buy that statement because, sir, as long as our soldiers are being targeted, the civilians are not safe even to offer their Friday prayers in the mosques. Universities are being targeted, Chinese are being, I mean, there is a long list, I can go on and on. But to cut the long story short, this BLA, which is a banned outfit, a terrorist organization, accepted by the West also in that particular regard, and that is also something of prime concern. And it seems that the splinter groups of the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan and their associates are very much in touch with BLA and all these Baloch liberation groups, and they are carrying out these activities, and basically they seem to be the puppets, but the puppeteer is either in Washington or perhaps in New Delhi, or maybe both.
Yes, definitely, Faisal. That is the quite clear case that the puppeteers are on both places at the moment. And whether if we talk about Pakistan-American relations, whether we talk about India-Pakistan situation, they, since, this Taliban regime, they tried to get their revenge, I should say, at any cost from Pakistan. And the easiest or the soft target against Pakistan is always exploiting terrorist organizations such as BLA and other elements, which are being used by Indian RAW and other elements, CIA and other elements in past as well. And unfortunately, for our situation, internal situation, Pakistan could not send a proper message to India for these recent, terror activities in Pakistan, that Pakistan did not openly talk about who is behind these attacks. And yes, there is no doubt that Indian, when initially Taliban came over and we thought that all Indian investment is gone down the drain of $3 billion and 30 projects and all that. We talk about this on Indian channels as well. But I would say that Indians have cleverly regained their proxies in Afghanistan, and now they are hurting badly to Pakistan. And you rightly said that as a sovereign country, we will not compromise on our sovereignty, and if we have to target and if we have to target inside Afghanistan, then if we will left with no choice, then Pakistan has to do it, because we have seen when America can do that on the basis of their claim of their so-called security or the other way. So Pakistan have the equal right. And I would like to say one more thing with reference to Foreign Minister Bilawal's visit to US, that I would say that we must try to restore our warm relations with Americans, but we cannot repeat the history of overcommitment. Whenever we try to restore our relations, warm relations with America, we always went to overcommitted, and we did it more than their expectations. Again, Ambassador Sir was rightly saying that we should follow what Foreign Office is saying rather than doing any kind of overcommitment. That should be the prime line for the Foreign Minister's visit. And again, we should openly tell Americans that if there will be cross-border terrorism in Pakistan from Afghanistan, then Pakistan would have blame and would have proofs and give the dossiers against India. We will provide the evidence, and now it is America's job to give a clear
providing
message.
dossiers, is it going to work for us? It hasn't so far. I mean, no matter how many documents you give them, but there's no response. Perhaps they're keeping those dossiers in some drawer, and I mean, forget about it.
I fully agree with you, Faisal, that the dossiers are not working. But this is something which we have to keep practicing as well, not only to Americans. I always say that now we need to address to the masses in USA, in Europe, in England, in United Kingdom. We need to tell their public that what exactly their governments are doing. We need to tell their masses exactly.
Perhaps you're talking about an aggressive approach by the Foreign Office. And that is how it works.
A diplomatic approach, but little bit on upfront, I should say.
All right. So last 1 minute, Basit Saab, and the question is about because initially, sir, this is how we look at it. The Taliban was supposed to cut a deal between Pakistan and the TTP, correct, sir? Which they haven't been able to. 2 days of ceasefire or 3 days of ceasefire won't make any difference, or ceasefire on the Eid day or perhaps in Ramadan. There has to be a proper ceasefire. A lot of people believe that there is this element of trust deficit. So we believe on both sides and from both sides. But sir, even after the truce or the deals, if we see our soldiers being targeted, don't you think, sir, we have a legitimate right to forget about the deal and let's deal them in the real way and fix wherever the problem is?
Certainly, sooner or
I'm
later.
talking about the kinetic means this time, sir.
Sooner or later, Pakistan has to take the decision. Although it's good that we hold back that decision, but this loss of life is something which cannot be justified.
Yes, we are a resilient nation, sir, but we are not somebody who is going to shy away.
That's right. But the effort must be to actually remind Taliban of what our role has been and what their commitment has been, and press upon them to meet their commitments, and otherwise whatever the consequences are, they should be very clear that they will have to face those consequences.
So it has to be very black and white, no grey areas, sir.
Exactly.
Thank you very much, Comrade Basit Saab. Thank you very much, Ambassador Durrani Saab, for your presence, and it was a pleasure having you, Hamid Khan Saab, as well. And that's all we have for this hour. I'll see you tomorrow at 8:05 p.m. Till then, you take good care of yourself. Khuda Hafiz.